Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first WisTech webinar for 2025. My name is Laura Plummer, and I am with Department of Health Services with WisTech, Wisconsin's Assistive Technology Program. This webinar is being recorded, and I thank everyone for joining today. I'm very excited about our topic. We're going to be learning and exploring generative artificial intelligence, or AI, today. So just a few pieces of housekeeping as we get going. So this is the webinar platform, which does mean that your video and your microphone are automatically turned off. We are encouraging you to use the chat feature for the interaction in the webinar. Q&A is also available if you choose to use that instead. There will be a few opportunities where our presenter will be asking for your input or feedback, so please use the chat for that. We have our captioning and our sign language interpreters available. And again, this will be recorded and placed on the WisTech YouTube website. We do offer free CEUs and CRC credits. And in order to get those, you will receive a survey at the end of this webinar when it closes, as well as tomorrow in email. And it is required to complete that survey if you are interested in receiving the CRC or CEU credits. Those are issued within 1 month of the end date. So by June 8th, you would receive those if you've completed the survey. And I believe that is all of our housekeeping today. So I'm very excited to welcome April Pierson, a close colleague and friend who has generously agreed to share her knowledge and how she has utilized AI in the work that she does. I'll let her share a little more about her background, but she actually has really encouraged me to start embracing AI and starting to utilize it more than I have in the past. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to April, and very excited. And again, welcome everyone for joining today. Go ahead, April. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you all for joining. I am so excited to talk to you about AI. I've been working with Laura for a while and maybe a little over enthusiastic about it. I interject about AI all the time, like, ooh, ChatGPT said this. So when she asked me to do this presentation, I thought, what a better opportunity to do a lot of research and really geek out in preparation. So I'm excited to share with you and also get your thoughts. And do I know how to use my computer? Let's see. Okay. So just to give you an overview of what we're going to be doing today, this is broken up into 2 hours. So the first hour, we're going to do basics of AI and generative AI. I'll share with you basically my case study of my experiences with AI, which is something that I haven't found in all my research, is someone really talking in depth about how they've used it over time. And I want to give you opportunities to share how you are using AI or how you think you'd like to. And like Laura mentioned, please ask questions anytime in the chat. I don't think I can keep an eye on the chat and the presentation, but Laura said that she'll jump in and just let me know to address things. And then for the second hour, we're going to jump into more concerns and limitations and ethics and case studies. And again, at the end, you'll have an opportunity and throughout to share your thoughts and concerns about generative AI. So a little bit about me. I don't normally talk about myself in this much depth, but because I'll be sharing how I use generative AI, I think it is relevant to get into my background probably a little bit more than usual. So I started my career in vocational rehabilitation and eventually became really interested in educational technology and online education and pursued actually 2 additional degrees in that. But I used to be a CRC and CVE back in the day at Stout. And then, kind of interesting thing is a couple years ago, shortly after the pandemic, my husband and I decided to take basically a mid-career hiatus. And we lived in a van for 2.5 years, and we built a house, and we've started a camper van business. So I'm going to talk about how I've used AI in the business as well, which maybe that doesn't affect you or in your jobs right now. But if you're working with clients who are starting a business, hopefully that'll be helpful tips. I am very much a technology enthusiast. I just enjoy learning about new technologies, and I've been using generative AI since early 2023. So because I was on my career hiatus at this point, I was mostly using it for personal reasons and just because I was interested in it. So like I mentioned, I'll talk about myself a lot. Apologies. And I used ChatGPT intensively while I was creating this presentation, so I want to make sure to disclose that. And almost all of the images in here were created with ChatGPT and the tool that it uses behind the scenes, which is called DALL-E, and I'll get into that a little bit more. Yeah, Laura.
Hi, and I see an image on the screen, and I'm hoping if you have images on the screen, please just do a brief description. But I'm guessing that this is an AI generated image of yourself.
That is a
Am I right?
perfect segue. So the image on the bottom right is what I uploaded to ChatGPT, and I said, create an image of me that looks like I'm collaborating with ChatGPT. And the one on the left is what it came up with. So on the AI generated one, I'm sitting in front of my computer and there's a little brain coming out of it. And then the original one, I'm in my friend's workshop and I have a dog on my shoulder and the background is not nice. So on its own, it created a really nice background for me. So I was very entertained by what I came up with that one. And I'll show you plenty more. It's going to be a lot, probably. So I want to tell you about where I'm coming from. I don't have formal education in AI. I have an intensive technology background from online education. But as I mentioned, during the time AI really started becoming popular, that's when I wasn't working full time. So I am obsessed with the podcast Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard, and he had a lot of good AI experts on there that really piqued my interest, like Mustafa Suleiman, if I'm saying that right, Reid Hoffman. There's plenty more. So I recommend if you're interested in Armchair to go back and check out some of those episodes on AI. It's a really user-friendly way to get into it. I took a course from Google, and because I'm very structured education focused, so I like to have that experience of going through a class. So this AI Essentials class was pretty basic for me, but I think for if you're really new to AI, it could be a good way for you to get a solid background in a really structured way. This book, Teaching with AI, because my background is primarily in higher education, this blew my mind. I mean, their examples that they have in here are really fascinating on how instead of worrying about all of the problems with AI, I mean, which we do need to obviously be concerned with, how we can instead modify our practices to incorporate it and teach students digital literacy skills with AI. And then if you're going to read one book about I recommend Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick. He is a professor at the Wharton School, if I'm saying that correctly, and he researches AI. So he has a really interesting take on it, and he also talks about his personal use of AI in writing the book, which is fascinating. And then Mastering AI, this also was a really good book. And actually, I listen to a lot of books. I have a Spotify Premium account, and if you also have Spotify Premium, you get like 10 hours of free book content a month. So it's a great way if you're doing some work around the house or whatever to listen to a book. I recommend both of those. Oh, and Jeremy Kahn, he is actually a journalist. So I think it's important to look at the background of people when you're learning about AI. He has probably the most unbiased view of AI that I've found of anyone so far. So that's a really good book too. And then the image I just brought up of the OpenAI logo, ChatGPT is OpenAI is the company that owns ChatGPT. And I actually learned a lot about ChatGPT from ChatGPT. So it's kind of meta to ask it questions about itself. And then I would also ask it for its sources on some things too. I'll show you examples. And I watch a lot of YouTube videos. So while I'm on the elliptical, I'll watch a TED Talk from the creator of OpenAI, because things are always changing. So it's important to keep up to date with that. And make sure if you're looking for resources, you're looking for the date it's created. I found one book that I thought looked really interesting, and I kept waiting for it to catch up, but it turns out the book was 10 years old. So that one, I stopped listening to. And look at who's creating it and what their background is. And, people have many different perspectives on AI right now. So the first thing I want to get into is the difference between traditional AI and generative AI. So traditional AI, when I put things on the screen in quotation marks, that's something that I've asked ChatGPT and what it's told me. So traditional AI analyzes data, makes decisions, or automates tasks based on rules or patterns. It doesn't create new content. So we've been using lots of AI things for many years, like spam filters, the algorithm that gives you recommendations and all sorts of tools, Tesla self-driving car lane, etc., facial recognition, and even credit card fraud. So those are things that we've been using over time. And then the technology has just improved substantially to now create generative AI. So the image I have on the screen is on the left side, it's more robotic images and a chart and fraud detection. And then on the right side, it's a person at a computer who's creating a poem and some sort of music and a text thing. So in this presentation, we will focus on Gen AI because, the topic of AI itself is just gigantic. So ChatGPT, you've already heard me mention, probably heard this term before. So it's a tool created by OpenAI, probably the most popular generative AI tool right now. It's kind of like the Kleenex of Gen AI. You don't say facial tissue, probably, you say Kleenex. So a lot of people say ChatGPT, and they could mean a few different things. And ChatGPT stands for, obviously, chat, because you're supposed to be interacting with it, ideally. Generative Pre-trained Transformer. So generative means you're generating something. And then I'll get more into the other two in a minute. And some other popular AI tools that I've experimented with, and I'll share a little bit about too, are Claude by Anthropic, Microsoft's Copilot, which is integrated into the various Microsoft tools, and then Google Gemini. Although I'm a Mac user, I have an Android phone, so I've been using Gemini on my phone. So I've been trying to split up my experiences to try all the different tools, and so far, other than Copilot, they've been pretty similar. Okay, let's do a poll, and I'd like to find out your background with generative AI, where you're at with it. So, Laura, do we have the poll feature within the Zoom meeting functional, or do we do chat?
Yes, we do. So I will give it a whirl and hope all works well. So do
Okay.
you want to first just read out the question and the answers, and then I'll launch the poll?
Yep, thank you.
Yeah.
So for the poll, the question is, what's your experience with generative AI, ChatGPT, Copilot, etc.? Make sure you're focusing on generative AI for the question. So the A is none, never used it, vaguely heard of it. B, just curious. I've played around with it a few times. C, occasional user. I use it once in a while for work or fun. D, frequent user. I regularly use it for personal or professional tasks. And E, power user. I explore advanced uses like prompting strategies, fine-tuning, or other integrated tools.
Great. And I did see someone, we haven't launched the poll, so that's why you have not been able to respond yet. So if for whatever reason you cannot respond to the poll, if it doesn't work on your end, please just go ahead and pop it in chat. But I'm going to launch the poll and we'll hope it works. All right. And hopefully individuals are able to see. Yep, it's populating now. We're about 80% have participated, so I'll give it a couple more, another minute.
Nice. This is kind of what I was expecting. So we have a lot of occasional users is our biggest category so far at 37%. And then none, never used it, 22. 20% are curious, 19% are frequent, and 2% are power users.
Excellent. I
Yeah,
will go
real
ahead and
interesting.
close that poll. Go ahead.
So one thing I wanted to mention earlier and I forgot is because I'm not an expert on AI, I'm a little nervous about sharing things. So please, I mean, I'm so excited for you to ask questions. If you're like, why do you do it that way? I might be like, is there a different way? So we're all here learning. Great. Thank you for participating. Oh, am I supposed to, can I okay, maybe you can all see it right now. There we go.
Yeah, there you go. And then did you click stop sharing or is it sharing?
Oh, is it sharing my screen?
I'm seeing, yeah, I'm gonna just click stop sharing on the poll.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right, now I have live demo, so I think that's where you want to be, right?
Right. Yep. Thank you. Okay, so before we get more into ChatGPT, I would just want to show you in action how it works because I think that's the best way is, instead of talking about it theoretically, here's actually what it does. So I'm going to go over to my ChatGPT window. If I know how to use my computer. There we go. And I've
And your sharing
lost
did
the
stop.
share.
Yep.
Apology. Okay, I'm back. Maybe. Okay, so here it is what it looks like when I open up ChatGPT. Normally it says my name, actually. What would you like to do, April, or something like that? And you can ask it anything right here. So you'll see there's this search button at the bottom, deep research, which is a way to ask it for a very thoughtful answer on something, or create an image. So today I'm just going to ask, how many people use ChatGPT? So you can see how quickly it's coming up with something. It just says searching the web right now. Fingers crossed. Live demos are a little nerve-wracking. So it says, as of May 2025, ChatGPT has approximately 800 million weekly active users, a significant increase from the 400 million reported in February. So rapid adoption and integration. And then I like how it often has some bulleted items. It'll have a heading in there. So key usage statistics, how many people use it daily. And then actually most of the time it'll end asking me a question, like, do you want to find out more about something? But this time it didn't. So, so how many people in the US use ChatGPT I'm following up with? And it's a little slower than usual, probably because I'm streaming a webinar right now, but don't fail me now, ChatGPT. As of May 2025, the United States boasts approximately 70 million monthly active ChatGPT users, which is about 19% of the platform's global user base. The US is leading country in ChatGPT adoption. And yeah, age groups is something I wanted to mention. It's probably not super surprising that a lot of younger adults are using ChatGPT. I love chatting with my nieces and nephews about how they use it. Um, my niece said, well, I don't use it for important things. And we had a good discussion about what important things are. And so just a little demo of ChatGPT. Changes all the time. It just started adding these searched images at the top of my options. That's a new thing as of a couple days ago. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint now and Then we'll go back and forth a little bit. There we go. So let's talk a little bit about the pre-training part of ChatGPT, the P in the GPT. The information that is fed to ChatGPT is from publicly available resources. So Wikipedia, forums like Reddit, which I do find a lot of information from Reddit, but it can be problematic at times. Books and articles in the public domain, academic papers, code samples. One thing I'm not going to get into here is that it's heavily used for coding and common web text available online. And then humans fine tune the information. So this is oddly enough somebody that I met while traveling. He used to fine tune ChatGPT and he said it was like being in school every day. It was a lot of analyzing text and writing things. And there's also people who go through and filter out various images, pornography, things that they don't want to be sharing through the model. And I asked ChatGPT, is it still learning from my input? And it says, nope, not on the fly. Once the model is trained, it's not continuously learning from users. However, OpenAI may use your interactions if you opt in to fine-tune future versions. And something to keep in mind is that these things change all the time. So you want to keep an eye on the terms of service if this is something that's important to you, and I'll show you where the setting is later on. And the image I have on the slide is a robot and the ChatGPT logo and different sources of media being actually coming out of it. Now that I analyze that image, it should probably be the other way, but ChatGPT made it for me. And then I'm just going to get a very little bit into how it works behind the scenes, which is the transformer part. So if you've heard anything about neural networks, this is something I'm not super knowledgeable about. So I've used the informations word for word from ChatGPT here. A neural network analyzes the patterns in how words and ideas appear together using advanced math to predict what word or sentence should come next. So basically, the way this works is very complex, fast word prediction. So, on your phone, as you're typing something, it'll come up with the words. This is, you know, super massive, large scale behind the scenes, how ChatGPT is working. So I anthropomorphize ChatGPT a lot, but it's important to remember it doesn't know what's true or false. It's just predicting the next word based on what it has been pre-trained on. It doesn't have a personality, although it sure feels like it sometimes. I mean, I've asked it questions and it's just impressive how chatty it can get. And the thing that I keep thinking of is that movie Her from 2013. It's amazing how before its time that movie was. If you don't know about it, I haven't seen it in a long time, but Joaquin Phoenix falls in love with his robotic voice, Scarlett Johansson. So it's probably worth another rewatch now that we have ChatGPT. So something important to discuss with generative AI is that the key is the prompts that you enter, the information you give it, and how you ask questions. So everything I've read has a few specific guidance here. So the task, what do you want it to do? And the image I have on the slide is kind of funny because it's created with ChatGPT. The way that I developed this was I would break up all my slides and then I asked ChatGPT, what image should I use for a slide like this? And it would give me an idea. Actually, it would usually give me four ideas. And then I would ask it to create something. So this is one it created, and it has a person in front of a computer, and they have typed in, "Samant's this article for me." And then the response is, "Until there's a summary of the article, and then kind of some lorem ipsum text." So that was one thing that I noticed early on with ChatGPT. It wasn't very good at creating text. So the task, back to my list, what do you want it to do? And then the context. So I would tell ChatGPT, I'm giving a presentation on AI and the participants are going to be in the field of vocational rehabilitation. And what I've read is you can even say things like, "This is really important to me." And all this additional information it's able to take into account to craft a response to you. Persona, so if you want it to reply in the tone of someone, so respond to this as if you are my supervisor or something like that. People use it for kind of cheesy reasons, like write this in the tone of Shakespeare or something like that. And then format style. I found this most helpful with images. So what is the style that I want this to look like? Later on, I'll show you a few that I've created. And you can even upload references and examples so you can tell it more of what you're looking for. And then go back and forth. So that's the chat part. A lot of times it'll ask you a question at the end. Do you want more information about this? And I always feel like I have to say, no, I don't want that, but this. And it's really interesting how you develop over time, how you interact with it. So some of the tips and settings that I want to go through, of course, it's always changing. I mean, since I've started creating this presentation, so many things have changed. It is, I would say, generally improving. But one interesting thing that happened recently is a new update made it very chatty and personable. This is something that the um, owner or director of AI was talking about, and people were complaining about it. They just wanted a little more direct communication. So they actually changed it to make it less chatty after that. And note that you will put in the same prompt or similar prompt and get different responses over time. So it's interesting to do that. And so, for example, one thing I would ask it when I was applying for a job is to come up with different interview questions I might get asked. And it would come up with wildly different questions from day to day. And I mentioned the follow-up questions. You can turn that on or off if you like it or not. So one screenshot I have on the screen is about memory. So it will remember things about you if you want it to. So the saved memories are things that I'm not sure how it chose these, but it remembered certain things about me. And they seem kind of random. I don't know that they're the best representation. One thing that recently changed is that it can reference all of your chat history now. So the way it used to work was within one chat, it would remember everything. But you start a new chat and it's like blank slate. It doesn't know any of that other information. So now you can set it so it remembers everything you've ever chatted about. And then model improvement. This is what I was mentioning about allowing your content to go back to ChatGPT to be fine-tuned. So they call it improve the model for everyone. Now, that's some interesting language, isn't it? I have opted to not do that. I generally have a pretty liberal information sharing, but I'm just not comfortable sharing all of my content back with ChatGPT in that way. And then on the far right of the screen, I have information about the different models that it's using. So the pre-training that I mentioned, that is a very intensive process where all this information is put into the model and they create different specific versions. So over time, I have seen it change so much. I think I started at 3.5 is when I started using it intensively, and now it's on 4.0, and I'm a paid, I pay monthly for ChatGPT Plus, and I get to use 4.5 a certain number of times. And it's been just impressive how much better it's gotten over time. So if you're a free user, you're probably going to get an older version of ChatGPT for free because the subscription model is you pay for more features. So overall, oh, did I hear a mic? Oh, okay. I just want to share some principles for effective generative AI usage. Number one, don't share sensitive information. So of course it's not HIPAA compliant. I think of it as I'm not going to share anything that I wouldn't share on social media publicly. And the extent to which you are comfortable sharing information is going to vary from what I do. I've uploaded pictures of myself to ChatGPT to use for things like the image you saw earlier. So this is a personal decision, but definitely, in the field of vocational rehabilitation, there's some pretty clear-cut things, client names, information about them. Human oversight is the key to Gen AI. So the problematic part of it is when people have it create something and they're like, okay, all done. So we need to plan on this being an iterative process. You're going to make many versions and keep going back and forth with ChatGPT. So it is a human and AI collaboration. And I think in an ideal world, you're using it to enhance your outcomes, not just for convenience. So rather than saying, oh, I'll just have ChatGPT do that, it's more like, how can I become better by using ChatGPT? And being an informed user, so you're doing that by being here today. The important thing is to keep in mind all the changes it can go through. Some of the early concerns with ChatGPT that were very prevalent have now been addressed to various degrees. So keeping up to date with some of the things. And then when you've used it, disclosing your usage and discussing usage with the people that you're working with. So this image, it's a little cheesy. I apologize. I asked it to create a cyborg version of me. So the funny thing is, it's me with my hair, and then I have, how do I describe this? I'm like a cyborg from the neck down. And then I have, kind of metal stuff coming up my face, a red like laser eye. Funny thing is, I still have the same glasses on. So cyborg, I mean, how do you keep it on with just one side, I guess? Um, so yeah, we had a good laugh at that one.
And April, this is
Yeah.
Laura. I know you're going to get to this probably more in the second part, which is why we're doing this in combination with ethics.
Yes.
But we have a question saying, statement slash question, if you tell it not to use your information to improve it for everyone, the toggle setting you indicated, why do you need to be so careful about what you put into it? So that you may be getting to this later, but just that's sort of a thought process. And that's one of our ethical decision points,
It is
which is why we're
indeed.
having this webinar. Good question.
Yes. Yes. How much faith do you put into tech companies? I think that's what it comes down to, right?
Yep.
And workplace policies I think are important to address this too. So thank you for bringing it up. It's a really good question, and we will talk more about that in the second part. Like I mentioned, I do pay for ChatGPT Plus. So if you try some of the th same things that I am doing and you're not paying for it, you might get a different result that's not as robust, especially in image creation. When I started using ChatGPT, it was mostly for rewording or rephrasing things that I'd written. So I got stuck or it doesn't sound right. So I'd ask, how can I state this differently? Very basic use. I also use it about really regular to just learn something complex that I want more information from what I would get in a basic Google search. And a good example of that is when I asked my financial advisor a question and he responded with this very long, in-depth email. And I didn't even know how to ask follow-up questions really. So I was able to ask ChatGPT the follow-up questions and not worry about feeling so stupid. And of course, I didn't share, sensitive information in there. One thing you may have noticed with Google searches now is the AI preview at the top. So that is using probably Gemini because it's Google. And same concerns with generative AI that I'll be talking about here come up in that AI preview. So an example is that I was learning how to create homemade pizza dough, and the information it gave me was completely opposite of everything else that I learned. And I did more research, and it was conclusively telling me one thing, but what I found to be true was the opposite. So, of course, you always have to be evaluating the information that you're getting from AI.
And April, this is Laura. I recently attended a performance by Alton Brown, who did a segment on AI as part of his show.
Mhm.
And he was, many people say that they are using generative AI to input ingredients in their kitchen and
Mhm.
make me a recipe or tell me what to cook. And so
Mhm.
he actually did that. And he said, but in the style of Alton Brown. And it was something like pickle cake. And so he decided, it was so outlandish that he decided to actually follow the AI
Mhm.
instructions and make
Yeah.
this pickle cake. So it was just hilarious. But it kind of reiterates your point of we still have to use our critical thinking
Yes.
um, with the information that we're given. So he had fun
Absolutely.
with it.
Nice. Did he eat it?
I think he tasted it, yes.
Okay. I mean, I love pickles, maybe, but I've used AI quite a bit for trip planning, and it's been helpful to come up with a lot of ideas, but the problem is it's often been missing a piece of information that was really important for me to know. For instance, one hike that it wanted me to go on was through an area that required 4x4 and it was very sandy, so just getting to the hike was not an ideal situation. I saw there was a hand raised. Should we?
This is Laura. If you, Annie, I see your hand raised. If you wouldn't mind just using the chat with the webinar platform, it's challenging to try to unmute someone. If you're able to use the chat, we'd appreciate it. Thanks.
So for trip planning, one thing I also found out is that I have to tell it where I'm starting from. So, I mean, there's just a lot of little basic things that you have to keep iterating as you ask it questions. Time of year is important. And it's just missing some of those human aspects that you would get from a more specific app. Like if you go into Google reviews, you're going to find more up-to-date information. Because remember, the model was trained at a certain point in time. So it's not going to have real-time information on like trail conditions or construction in the area or things like that that you might find out from other sources like All Trails or Google reviews. But it gave me a good starting point.
And April, sorry to keep it offering.
Oh, that's okay.
So we've got sort of a comment again, this may come later, but what do you do? You know, you work for a county agency, and how do you explain? I'm guessing this is like the value, like to your supervisor or to the agency, that you're trying to use it, but not for something that is HIPAA related, et cetera. And I can share that Department of Health Services and maybe all of, actually it was DOA, so the whole state has updated policies now in IT related to AI, that we are not to use generative, like even the note takers, any of that. So I think, you know, this individual is sort of wondering, like, how do you justify, like, I'm only using it for this. It's not anything with clients. But again, those are your agency policies. So we are still bound to follow those, even if
Mhm.
in our judgment we feel that it's overreach.
Yeah, in the second part of the presentation, we'll be doing a Padlet, and I want to find out who has policies on workplace AI usage because we're at a weird point with this where not everyone does. You know, in classrooms, it's ideal for instructors to have policies on AI usage, and a lot of them just don't. So, or they'll say no AI usage at all. And I think part of it is just understanding the potential that it has. You know, a lot of people they learned about it really early on and don't understand how it can be utilized to improve things. Like a couple of things I'll show you. Well, of course, I'm on the occasional goofy things like turning dogs into humans. I'll show you that real quick, of course. Some of the projects that I've used AI on extensively are instructional design work. So as a instructional designer, I work with instructors to create online courses. And sometimes I just need a first draft to work off of when I'm feeling stuck. To me, that is the most valuable thing of AI is like when I have writer's block, I can just have AI create something that I can edit off of. For the van business, I've used it to create logos, to create a website layout, and to have a starting point for some documents. When I went through an entrepreneurship class, the attorney that spoke to our class said that for any documents or contracts that we want created, his recommendation was to first use AI to create a draft so it has in it what we wanted, and then send it to him and he will modify it after that because it reduces his time overall. Job preparation materials. So I recently got a full-time job and it was fascinating to be able to use AI during this whole process. And this presentation, as I mentioned. And the thing with me and AI is that there isn't a clear boundary between me, what I create, and what AI creates. So Ethan Mollick, in the book I mentioned earlier on, Co-Intelligence, he calls this being a cyborg, where it's integrated. Me and AI are working together to improve everything. So to describe in more in depth what I used it for with the resume and job materials, I hadn't updated my resume in quite a while, so I had it write some typical duties, like what does an instructional designer do in this context? And I was able to pick and choose from that. So it gave me some good wording, gave me some ideas. I'm like, oh yeah, I did do that. So this could be considered a hallucination, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later on, where it's just making things up. Because remember, generative AI is just really fancy autocomplete. I had some things in there from my last resume, and I was like, wow, this is really long. So I'd ask it to summarize those pieces, and then I was able to work off of what it came up with as a summary and implement that. I realized some things sounded awkward or some paragraphs were awkward, and I'd have it reword it a few different ways. You can say reword this in a more professional manner, or whatever type of conversational style you're looking for. And then something that was really helpful was for the 3.5 years that I didn't have full-time employment, I was able to go back and forth with ChatGPT about how to frame that in a way where it seemed positive to an employer. And that's something that I would have wanted to talk to a person about, but I didn't have a person to talk to about it. So that's something that's ChatGPT has been so helpful to me is just being able to go back and forth with someone because I do much better when I can chat with someone about something. And even though I have to take it with a grain of salt, I mean, that's what I do with a person anyway. So I don't always, I appreciate people's feedback, but you don't incorporate everything. And ChatGPT is always there, super fast. It's infinitely patient. You can ask over and over. And I did ask it to provide overall feedback. So I'd upload my resume and say, give me feedback on this. And I think the problem with that was I wasn't specific enough in the type of feedback I was looking for, because that often was not very valuable when I asked it in general to give me feedback. I had it write the first draft of my cover letter. So I uploaded my resume and the job description, and I said, write a cover letter, which I have an example in the next slide. And the first one that it came up with, I was just like, wow, this is so good. But then I dug into it. I'm like, ah, it's missing this, it's missing that. 10 revisions later, I have a completely different document. So that's something that happens to a lot of people. They're really excited about the first thing, but it's so important to dig deeper and make sure that it's really personalized to what you're getting into. It did try to push me towards being professional versus I'm a pretty informal person. So what I wanted to do was, show who I am a little bit in it, but it kept trying to get me to gloss over some things and emphasize other things. And it started feeling like it wasn't genuine. And then I think I mentioned I had a practice interview questions. So I said, give me 10 questions that you would get an instructional designer interview. And I hardly got any of those. So it was not very valuable for that at all. And then here's an example on the slide, just a screenshot of what I uploaded to ChatGPT, my resume, the job description. And the way that I prompted it was write a cover letter based on the attached resume that's appropriate for the job posting attached. Emphasize how I used to work at SVRI and have experience in both instructional design and working with people with disabilities. Also have a paragraph addressing my departure from full-time employment at a university since 2021. And then the follow-up response there.
And then
Um,
April, this is Laura. I think it was answered by another participant, but someone's just wanting to confirm that instead of typing, you can use a microphone to provide the prompts to the AI's tool.
Yes, you can. So back over to the ChatGPT window, there is a microphone right here, so you can dictate. Interestingly, I think of something to ask. It like pauses and then it types it all out afterwards. For me, I'm more of a typer, but that's definitely an option. And I think most people on their phones will use the dictate option too, so you can definitely do that, and then it will read it back to you too. So it's an awesome accessibility feature. Just to show you on the left side of the Chat GPT screen here, I don't want to do too much of a tech demo. This is already going so much longer than I anticipated. I could talk to you about AI for like 4 hours. On the left side here are all of the chats that I have saved since I started using it. So it's just scrolling on back to 2023. I did delete a whole bunch of them, but it's kind of nice to be able to search and refer back to some of the things that I've done in the past. And at the top, I have projects. You can organize things. If you have ongoing projects, you can have all the chats in one area, which is really helpful. So in the resume, cover letter, interview section, I have a bunch in here. And then in the business section, I have some things incorporated into here. And then for the AI presentation, this is kind of all over the place. Over time, I've gotten a little bit better at having a specific chat for each thing I'm asking, but I tend to have a chat about something, and then I'll ask it a random question, and then it gets off track. So, I mean, you may determine over time that you don't need that. It's whatever works for you.
And then you can delete that. That was a question.
Oh, yes, you can delete them at any point. There's three dots over here. Rename. I do rename them sometimes if it's something really good I want to go back to. Add it to a project. Delete. Oh, and there's also a temporary button up here, usually. Everything's changing all the time. Oh, wait, maybe if I go back out to ChatGPT. Ah, here we go. On the top right, there's a temporary one. So if you don't want that saved in your chats, you can just do that. Let's see. Okay, so I'll go back to the PowerPoint. Uh-oh, which one is it? Oh, come on. Sorry. Oh boy. Too many PowerPoints. Eeh. All right, so I'll talk a little bit how I use ChatGPT to create this presentation. I did have Microsoft Copilot create a presentation for me from scratch, so it was not good. One thing that I've been thinking about is in education, how, can students just throw a topic into Microsoft Copilot, have a PowerPoint created, and then present it in the classroom? What I found is that if I had done that, it would be awful. I wouldn't have the right script or narration for each of the slides. And then I also uploaded my Word document outline to have it make a PowerPoint. Also, really bad. It didn't even organize things properly. So that feature is not where it seems like it is from some of the advertisements you might see online. And it was just more work to change what it did than start it from scratch.
And April, this is Laura. So a clarifying on the delete, someone's wondering if you can delete part of a chat versus a whole chat.
Part of a chat. I think you would have to delete the whole chat. I haven't seen a specific thing within a chat. I can look when I open it up next, but I'm pretty sure you'd have to delete the whole chat.
Thank you.
Mhm. So when I was creating this presentation, I created it in a Word document with an outline, and then I would chat with ChatGPT and add it back over there. That was the main thing that I used it for. And then when I created the PowerPoint, I laid it out by topic and used ChatGPT to create most of the images. Visual design is probably my biggest weakness. So it was really helpful for me to just ask ChatGPT, okay, I have a slide on this topic. What image would you use? And it would give me a couple options, and then it would say, do you want me to create these? So I'd say, yes, create, blah, blah, blah. Super helpful. And then later on, I'll share some of the case studies that ChatGPT and Claude created. And that was fascinating. So some of them I was amazed with how good they were. Others, they were way too long. Others, they were just so simple. There was a clear right or wrong answer. So I created about 25, and I'll share the five best ones later on. And this is just a quick mention. I heard a while ago that being polite to AI makes a difference in the results that you get. And I got this reel the other day, me walking through the AI apocalypse completely unbothered because I always said please and thank you to ChatGPT. Um, but there have been contradictory results that politeness to AI doesn't actually matter. So, it's always changing. That's why you have to keep up to date on things. Creating images, Dolly is the name of the image creator behind the scenes. And that's I think it's called a portmanteau, a combination of Wally the robot and Salvador Dali. So this image on the screen, I asked ChatGPT to create an image in the style of Salvador Dali with him in it, and that's what it created. Like I was pretty impressed. And then just a screenshot of the movie Wally with the robot is on here. And remember, when it's creating images, it is also just predicting the next pixel. So same thing as when it's creating words. And I mentioned how I was using that, and it's gotten so much better over time. It was really bad at first. I'll show you some of the logos that I created with ChatGPT about 6 months ago. The one that's on the screen right now, for some reason, it put a dog on top of the van, which is kind of cool, but not really what we were going for.
This is Laura. I don't quite envision your dog Harry making it to the top of your van.
No, I don't think that would work out very well. It's like 11 feet off the ground. And then the one that I just pulled up, it has a van and a really colorful background, and it says Driffles and Adventure. So the name of our company is Driftless Adventure Vans, but it could not get the text right. So we still joke around and we say Driffles and Adventure sometimes. And then the one in the middle, it's a really different style. It's really black and gray and white and orange, and there's a big dog in it. You'll see my dog in a second. And the text is very wonky. So none of those were usable, which was fine at the time because I just wanted some inspiration to talk to a graphic designer about. Recently, I just tried it again, just out of curiosity, and it has gotten so much better. So I gave it for a prompt was create a logo for a camper van conversion company called Driftless Adventure Vans. Use a colorful theme with the Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van in it. And I was like, wow, that's kind of use that almost as it is. It's a van. I kind of like that it has a sideways positioning, the name underneath spelled correctly, and then a colorful background, which, yeah, I'm a fan. And then I said, make it more of an adventure van with a black bumper and a winch and big tires, and it did that, but it changed the color of the van for some reason. So then I said, more adventure and make the van white again. I don't know if you've seen this, but there's a reel where they have ChatGPT create typical people from Bend, Oregon, and then it will say more Bend, more bendy, and then they just have like tons of water bottles and dogs and backpacks and stuff. But look that up if you're interested. So
And
last
here's a
couple
good one.
slides.
Here's a good one. This is a great picture too. Are you able to copyright your logo after you recreate it through AI?
So what ChatGPT says is that Yes, you can copyright the logo. You can use it. The issue with the one that I just created is that it has the Mercedes-Benz logo in it. I would have to remove that and genericize the van in order to use it. So what you create with ChatGPT is your content. It's the OpenAI terms of service. So that's pretty cool. So, cat on the screen, you may have seen before, Laura's cat, Sari. There's this trend to turn your cat or dog into a person, and I almost died laughing when that one came up. Another Sari, so perfect and beautiful. And then this is my dog, Harry, as a guy. I like how he has kind eyes like Harry. Harry's a Newfoundland, so he's a big dog, and it created a big guy in, interestingly, a black and white plaid shirt. Harry's a black and white dog, so it's pretty cute. And then this last one, the dog is laying on a couch on his side with his legs up, and creating that into a person added a weird leg coming out of his side. So that was entertaining. Okay, my personal pro con list, I just want to go through really quick and then we'll do an activity. I really like how AI gives options and organizes information well. It gets me unstuck, so I have something to react to. It's just someone to chat with, which is kind of like starting to almost get creepy that I find it kind of like a coworker. I think overall it makes me better. It improves my outcomes. I'm not using it to just do something for me, it's improving things. And AI is here to stay, so I'm glad I'm getting it on the ground level and building my skills over time with it. And I'm an informed user. I can talk to other people about it, and I just enjoy it. I think it's fun to try out new things. So for the cons, I think sometimes it's only helpful maybe like 75% of the time. But I'm pretty good at editing things and I do pay for it. So be aware that if you are using the free version, it might not be quite as useful to you because it's using an older model. And I've also found it is not very critical of me. So sometimes I've uploaded information and asked it something, and it just keeps going with what I put in. And I'm like, wait, am I on the right track here? So I'll say, well, look at this like an expert would on this topic. What am I missing here? So I think it's important to keep that in mind is it seems like it wants to keep just building off of what you're doing. And like I mentioned with the cover letter, it seemed really good at first, but it needed a lot of work after that first draft, actually. And if you're looking for something that's really timely or if sources are really important, that's when it's not the most ideal to use. So I have asked it, what are your sources for this? And then click on them from there. So it can help in that way, but if you're doing something academic, you're really going to be missing out on a lot of important information. And I don't know about you, but I've seen these ads for AI tools and it looks like it's just going to make your life so easy and do everything for you. And that is not what I have found. It takes effort and practice to use these tools effectively right now. And a lot of times you have to pay for the paid version too. Okay, so I'm very enthusiastic. I'm wondering if you all are kind of skeptical. I had AI create this image. I think it's pretty good. She has a pretty awesome eyebrow. So if you're looking at me like this, I just want to make sure you know I'm not trying to push people into using AI. I think especially right now, it is a personal decision whether you're comfortable with it. I'm going to talk more about the concerns. But for our break here, I want to use a Padlet to gather some information. Oh, I'll put this in the chat. Is that the best way to do that, Laura?
Yes.
Everyone. Okay, put the link for the Padlet in the chat. And what I'd like you to do is share some potential uses for AI in your job or life. Here's what the Padlet looks like. Potential uses for work, potential uses in life, not seeing it. Tell us more. Feel free. If you're just like, I don't know. If you have questions, if you have concerns to add things, you click on the plus sign below and then you can type in the box. Get Sylvie. Write something incredible. And
And
then
this is,
click.
if you do have trouble with the Padlet or if it's blocked or anything on your end, please feel free to use the chat as well. Thank you.
Mhm. I like the Padlet because it organizes everything together. And feel free to take a break. So we'll take a couple minutes here for things to come in. It's a good opportunity to use the restroom or get a coffee or something. We'll let this go for a little bit. And let's start again at 9:10. So 6 minutes.
That would be 11:10 if you were Central Time.
Oh, geez, sorry. I'm in
No
Oregon.
worries. No worries. We have a great example though in the chat. I took a photo of my living room and it had AI change the wall color, helped me decide on what color to paint the walls. That's great. It's less expensive than buying all those samples and painting them on a streak on the wall. And we're returning at 11:10. I saw that question in the chat. And this is Laura. I know we're still on break, but for those of you still listening or not taking a break, you can also paste or copy and paste the Padlet link onto a personal device if that is easier. And then you could submit like through your phone or something. That's what I have to do as I also am blocked on the state computer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Thank you so much for participating in the Padlet. I love this. I wish we had 4 hours. I don't know if you're down for it, but I would love to talk a lot more. Under the concerns, a lot of these things are what I'm going to hit on in this next section, and we'll also have another Padlet discussion about those relating specifically to workplace policies. A lot of people have mentioned using AI for grants, which I think is an excellent use. The key, of course, is the human in the loop, keeping an eye on the results and an iterative process of implementing the information. Adjusting written content to different reading levels. I think that is a fascinating use. I love that. And of course, the human in the loop reading it afterwards to ensure that all of the relevant information has been included. Drafting emails, brainstorming creative solutions, creating agendas. So much good information. Thank you. Yes, uses a lot of energy. Okay, Laura, can we tell that most people are back or carry on?
Yep, I think carry on. I think we should be good.
Okay. Let's jump back into the PowerPoint here. So inaccurate information, hallucinations, AI fakes, that's a huge concern with it, of course. I had it create this image of what would an AI hallucination look like. It's a person with an elephant head and a fish in the sky and an interesting sculpture of a torso with a tree and a arch and some clouds in the background. So interesting looking. It's not really what I was going for, but interesting example. And the key that we always have to keep remembering is that AI is really fancy autocomplete word prediction. It doesn't know what is true or not. That's why humans are important in this process, and critical thinking is more important than ever using AI. This, the sources of information that is trained on includes Reddit, which, Reddit is a great source of information, but you have to always critically evaluate who's posting it. Other random information from the internet. Now, there are people fine-tuning it, like I mentioned. This is getting better with every model that's released, but it's a lot of work to have someone fine-tune this information. And what I've heard is that it is workers in other countries who are not being paid very well, so there are ethical considerations with the people fine-tuning the information. So AI detection is becoming an information literacy skill. So my husband and I send each other all sorts of reels, and every now and then I'm like, oh, that one was AI, wasn't it? Dang it. It gets me every now and then too. So we just always have to be evaluating everything that we're seeing more than ever. Copyright and intellectual property are other important concerns with AI. I thought this quote from ChatGPT was interesting. AI technologies like DALL-E, Midjourney, and ChatGPT have democratized content creation. That just really sat with me. Democratized content creation. So, what OpenAI says, ownership of content, this was asked earlier, just to reiterate, as between you and OpenAI and to the extent permitted by applicable law, you A, retain your ownership rights and input, and B, own the output. We hereby assign to you all our right, title, and interest, if any, in and to output. This is something to keep an eye on. Copyright law is evolving with the cases coming up. So early on, this was a lot less clear, and now cases have been coming out that are clarifying how AI and copyright and intellectual property work together. But the thing is, what I've read from the Copyright Office is that AI works can only be copyrighted if substantial human input. So if you have AI write a book and you're like, here we go, that is not substantial human input. How is that verified? I don't know. I mean, there's many questions about that. And as someone mentioned in the Padlet, possibly the biggest issue with copyright intellectual property is the content used to train the models. So a lot of creative people, artists have issues with the, like the image I shared with Salvador Dali, how that was created in his style. The people that are having that done with their style have not always consented to that. They're not compensated and they're not attributed. I'm saying that correctly. So this is a huge problem that's evolving over time. I've heard Sam Altman, the creator of OpenAI, discuss it, and he frames it in a way where it's improving humanity, but to individual people, it's problematic. Environmental impact has come up. When I was doing the dog to human photos, I was like, okay, we need to stop. Like, I'm trying to use just Google searches for things because the environmental impact of AI is pretty substantial. So training the model, taking all that information in, involves a significant amount of electricity usage. And then the data centers need a lot of water for cooling. A lot of the data centers are located in places like Arizona that don't have a lot of water because of tax incentives. So at least they do have solar power, and then mining the materials for the AI chips as well. So this is definitely an issue that needs to be addressed as things continue to expand. Bias and lack of diversity, this was also brought up in the Padlet. So the information that's training the model, it is fine-tuned, but it's trained on data sets that underrepresent people with disabilities and diverse populations. The example that I heard is that in earlier versions of ChatGPT, it was unable to create an image of a black doctor saving the life of a white child. It does now, so this is what I have on the slide, but it just wasn't, it didn't have enough information in the training to create that image. Fascinating, right? And generative AI assumes that users have typical behavior. This is what ChatGPT said, speech mobility and vision. So it is not specifically designed for other populations. And what I've heard is that it can overly focus on the medicalization of disability and not include psychosocial and cultural variables as well. And then the interfaces of these tools also may not be accessible. I think there's a lot of advantages, like someone brought up earlier, being able to speak to ChatGPT and receive the output as audio. But accessibility is not always the top concern for these companies. And one thing that I think is really interesting is called the anchoring effect. When we receive a first draft, we tend to rely too heavily on it. So not a lot of people are really good at editing that first draft, which is why I wanted to mention I got the cover letter that seemed amazing, but I had at least 10 more edits of it afterwards. So it's important to not only put in helpful prompts, but to keep working with the information, keep evaluating it, set it aside, look at it later, maybe even ask ChatGPT to do it again later on and compare those results. And workplace AI policies. So does your workplace have an AI policy? The problem with sometimes having an AI policy is that people may hide their AI use. I mean, we have other devices. So I read an interesting article about this that mentioned that results in potentially lacking innovation if you look at it in the positive way. Some people are innovating using AI and not sharing it because it's not accepted in the workplace, but also could be a significant security issue depending on the information being used. So within the workplace, people can be using it really inconsistently, whether it is officially allowed or not. And then looking at more bigger picture things, becoming over reliant on AI. In the image on the screen, I asked ChatGPT what to create for this, and it basically has a robot puppet master in front of behind a person on a laptop. Kind of a creepy image. So, will we lose some of the skills that AI is doing for us? Will we not be able to write those first drafts anymore if we have AI do it forever? Will people trust the information too much and just run with it? I'm saying definitely don't trust the first draft. We need the human in the loop mentality to keep working with it, evaluating it, analyzing it. Will our life be dictated by the algorithm? I mean, it kind of already is, with social media and everything. These are big picture problems. So, and some of these suggestions came up from ChatGPT. Will it allow us to avoid responsibility? Being able to say like, well, this is what AI said. Will our interactions with other people change? That's why the politeness thing really struck me. So, will people be responding to AI in really direct ways and losing that politeness factor that is important in face-to-face communication? I mean, I think it's important to keep it. I still tell AI like, okay, no, that's not what I'm looking for, but here. And
And
then will
Ava,
AI, yeah.
I was just saying, yeah, we've kind of got a nice observation that goes along with this is Anna says that the fear that she's had with us, quote, older people, is that we've had to do things the quote hard way without AI. So we challenge and review the AI answers, i.e., we have, I'm just saying we have the critical thinking skills. And so she reflects on fear that younger generations are just going to trust so much more. Um, and I
Hmm.
and I would tend to view that as a very logical concern. And I have a parallel to that would be if, when we started having GPS navigation, um,
Hmm.
some of us older people can still know the difference between east and west and can navigate if someone says head east or west. And so have we seen that happen where we have a generation that can't? I haven't looked at the research. My guess is probably, but there's also probably a whole bunch of people that never use GPS that never learned how to navigate east and west either. So it's interesting. We are able to look back at some parallels, I think.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a great point. The example that I've read a lot that's brought up in relation is the calculator. People thought it would ruin everyone's math skills. And, it's interesting how we implement these things over time and adapt in ways that you wouldn't always expect.
Yeah,
So,
this is Laura. My stepson he was learning math at like age 7 or 8. And I asked him how much change was in his pocket. And so instead of adding it, he walked over to the vending machine that had a digital readout and plunked the change in and then said, look, I have $1.10.
it's
And then
amazing.
hit coin return and he got his money back. But he
Hmm.
was already using that technology to work
Yeah,
smarter, not harder.
it's a great example. Thanks for jumping in. And some big picture concerns that I'm not going to talk about in depth are just big picture misuse, misinformation, job displacement came up. AI is going to change almost every job if it hasn't already. It is a big deal. I've seen a lot of technologies in my experience with online education that people said is going to change the world, and it's moved us in different directions, but I think AI it's huge. Like it's everywhere. It's been mind-blowing for me. It's reinvigorated my interest in instructional design to have AI. Like super intelligence or loss of human control. I asked ChatGPT what some of the big concerns are with AI. That's a big one. It's important to remember that AI currently cannot learn on its own. So there's, movies about this, but it's very far off from the current situation and weaponization. So I just want to address that there's a lot of big picture things that people are worried about. And I think if you dig into it more and learn more about how it works behind the scenes, that they're kind of far-fetched, but there's glimmers of of issues, with changing jobs versus job displacement. There are some customer service jobs that are going to be dramatically changed with chatbots getting smarter. But interestingly, what I've read is that AI has changed jobs the most that are in business and education. So people using it to improve things. Okay, so concerns. Let's just take a minute in the chat. And let me go back to that Padlet actually and see what other concerns people want to bring up. Maybe discuss a little bit more too. I want to make sure I've addressed things in the Padlet. I've heard that every time AI is used, you're using 1 8-ounce bottle of water. What are the implications to the environment? Can the environment support the use of AI? This is a big concern for me whenever I'm doing something too. If I'm doing something goofy, I'm like, don't do this. Like, use it for things that are valuable for work. So, this is a systemic issue that the companies creating AI tools need to be able to be more transparent. Right now, they're not, from what I've heard in the books that I've read recently, we don't have a lot of transparency in the energy that's being used. So, yeah, it's a problem, definitely. I received an email that did not make sense in the context we were discussing, and I was later informed the person responding uses ChatGPT to compose his emails. My concern is that people use AI that don't understand the answer they were provided and just put it out there. Absolutely. I received an email recently where the person was just overly friendly and the tone wasn't right. And I was like, the content was there, but this isn't how people typically write. It just felt like an AI generated email. Concerned with plagiarism, taking things out of context, and hindering human creativity. I mean, I think that it can be used to increase creativity, expand things, but yeah, there's a few different directions it can go. Have seen clients obtain false information in their vocational research using AI. Absolutely. This is why we need the human in the loop to be triangulating, gathering other resources, using it as the first step a lot of times. Okay, this is a great example too. I like that it can be used as a tool to gather, get info, use in written communication, etc. However, I've had people use AI for these purposes and they do not understand audience, go back and edit things to fit the purpose, etc. The result has been that a clear response is not understood. Example, eighth grader tells AI to write a paper on plant synthesis. One is created, students submitted it, and the teacher notes that it is written at a post-high school level, that even they are wondering what the paper is talking about. LOL. So we're in the process of developing a whole different set of digital literacy skills to work with AI right now. It's a really fascinating time. Oh, and plagiarism detection or AI detection tools, they don't work very well from everything I've heard. There's a lot of false positives. So it's not like the Turnitin plagiarism detection where you could upload documents as an instructor and find other matching text in other places. It's not the same for AI. Okay, so let's move forward a little bit in the PowerPoint here and get into some ethical aspects. One thing that I wanted to point out when I was doing research on AI and ethics specifically related to vocational rehabilitation was this Dear Colleague letter from RSA about AI. And it's not specifically Gen AI, it's from October 2024. I have the URL on the site or on the page. And let me move this. It says the Rehabilitation Services Administration has identified 3 ways that AI has the potential to support individuals with disabilities in achieving competitive integrated employment, CIE, and to solve urgent challenges in the field. 1, the VR program should intentionally support the AI literacy of individuals with disabilities and prepare interested individuals with disabilities for careers in AI. Two, the VR program should be intentional in the ways it uses responsible AI to support CIE in any career field that an individual with disabilities chooses. And three, states may use responsible AI to create efficiencies in the operation of the VR program. And then a final quote I wanted to emphasize, it is critical that VR agencies, advocacy groups, and individuals with disabilities are co-creators of policies, plans, and products that impact them. So this is an interesting document to read through. I'll put it in the chat in a second. And then the CRCC Code of Ethics standards relevant to Gen AI. I went through and identified some of the most notable aspects that I thought were relevant. Of course, overall principles of ethical behavior relevant in everything we do. So autonomy, beneficence, fidelity, justice, non-maleficence, and veracity. These are always important to keep in mind. Specifically from the CRCC Code of Ethics, Section B talks about confidentiality, privileged communication, and privacy. So CRCs take necessary precautions to ensure client confidentiality. So this would relate to, of course, not sharing sensitive information in generative AI tools. Multicultural considerations. Now, some of this I might be taking a little differently than the section, but I think it's important, like I mentioned, to consider the potential for generative AI tools to have bias in the training data, and the importance of professional responsibility in going through the results. Recognizing client values. So refraining from attempts to influence the client to conform to the values, attitudes, and beliefs of CRCs. So one thing that I'm trying to do as I'm discussing generative AI with people is ensuring that, I have a particular set of values and other people view things different ways. So AI is something we're at the beginning of this, and not everybody feels the same way. So I'm trying to be respectful of that.
April, this is Laura. We have a one that addresses the multicultural slide.
Hmm.
So we've got a comment from Peggy. An issue for tribal nations is it's based on, what's already there, like the example of the Black doctor saving the white child. So generated content may further perpetuate false colonialisms around Native American narratives, cultures, things like that. So, the point of AI is it may conflict with some of the Native American reclamation of language and, the efforts being to preserve accent and language. So we may see conflicts multiculturally with tribal efforts to maintain their own integrity.
Yes. Thank you for bringing this up. Wow, that is, there's, see, and I'm so glad that people are jumping in on this because I am extremely enthusiastic about AI, and sometimes I need to be reminded of all these other aspects. And, I also want to make sure to say that over time, the fine-tuning is improving things. And, this is why we need input given to the companies to ensure that the fine-tuning is going and they have people involved who are, making it accessible for everyone. So professional responsibility, CRCs practice only within the boundaries of their competence and maintain their competence in the skills they use, are open to new procedures. So continuing to learn about AI. Oops. Veracity, CRCs only take credit for work they've performed. When using the work of others, ensure appropriate credit is provided. Newer novel practices. Explain to clients any related potential risks, benefits, and ethical considerations. And credible resources. So one thing that I've done with ChatGPT is when it gives me some information, I'll ask what their sources are and then go to those sources directly if it's something that requires that type of situation. And then in forensic services, ensuring that the resources are valid, current, and cited. Confirming information, verifying data, very important. And then section H, assessment and evaluation, explanation to clients. This relates to someone's example in the Padlet of potentially using generative AI to explain things in a different way. So I think that's a great use of it. So ensuring that explanations are provided in the language and cognitive level of clients. And then technology assisted education. When using technology, educators are competent in its use. If they are not competent in the use of the technology, they seek training or education to become competent. And then relating to research and publication, the key here is ensuring that there's agreements between authors in how AI would be used. I mean, an AI is not specifically mentioned in here, so this is all interpreting the code to relate to AI. And with intellectual property, not representing information obtained from other materials as their own. So that's something that I've been struggling with is in certain contexts, how to explain the involvement of AI. So I believe that if I'm comfortable disclosing my cyborg use of AI, that that is an ethical way to be using it and to disclose it. And then CRCs give credit. CRCs ensure that technology and equipment used, purchased, or recommended is in an accessible platform that meets the needs of the client. This could apply to chatbots. So if a company is using chatbots for clients to interact with, obviously they need to be accessible. And then CRCs are responsible for guiding clients to obtain reasonable access to pertinent applications. Whew, it's a lot of information. I also want to share just a couple of the case studies that ChatGPT created for me. Like I mentioned earlier, it came up with many of them. A lot of them were clearly right or wrong. Some of them were just way too in depth. These are some of the ones that I thought were kind of interesting. This is exactly ChatGPT's wording, so I'll read it out loud. Two clients are working towards the same career goal. One is highly tech savvy and uses ChatGPT to improve the resume, practice interviews, and analyze job descriptions. The other does not use AI and progresses more slowly. The counselor wonders whether to recommend AI use to even the playing field or let clients self-direct their tool use. So let's just take a minute in the chat. And if you'd like to share any thoughts on this case or how it was written from ChatGPT, I would love to know what you think. So I will take a look at the chat. Sharing options with individuals and allowing them informed choice to do what works best for them. Does the second person even know what ChatGPT is? I mean, that is a good question. It would have to be a full discussion. Having a job coach help them. And does the job coach know how to use it? You know, it's kind of a weird world we're in right now where people are learning. Yes, assumption is made that the difference in performance is only due to the use of ChatGPT. So many variables could be involved here. Yeah, using AI to prepare and communicate with employers is one thing, but then in the interview, being able to speak to things is another skill, and then being able to do the job. So AI can help with pieces of that, but yeah, recommending versus informing. Do you think this is a good case study that ChatGPT came up with? Yeah, it's very broad. And it depended on what information I gave it as well. And it varied day to day. So I actually did this in a few different platforms. I had Claude give some case studies as well. And I think Claude, some of them may have been better, but they were all really long too. But it's a starting point. I mean, I think it brought up a couple things for me when I was doing these case studies, like, oh, that's an interesting topic. I could write a better one or more in-depth one based on that. Okay, let's take a look at one more here. A client is unhappy with a vocational assessment summary. They enter their test results into ChatGPT and ask it to write a new interpretation. The AI version presents a more flattering view of their abilities, which the client brings to their counselor and asks to be added to their file. The counselor disagrees with the AI's interpretation, but also sees that it boosted the client's confidence and self-advocacy. I wanted to share this one because this is something that I would have never thought of actually. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Using a person using AI to sort of triangulate information, get another viewpoint on it, that's an interesting critical thinking skill to do that, right? Yeah, like you, I find that ChatGPT is almost always complimentary. I have to ask it to be critical. So, I mean, that's generative AI predicts, it doesn't interpret. Correct. Fancy word prediction, don't forget it's combining information. And, one thing that I've kind of wondered about too is, how the algorithm wants to point us to more things that increase our time on the app. Is generative AI going to do that too? Is it doing it already? Is that why it's complimentary to me sometimes? And chatty, it wants me to keep using it. Yeah, go in the file. That's what the client provided. I had a client use it for their disability application. It seemed to help him put it all together, but he was a little worried it would be flagged with a disability board. hmm It's interesting information literacy skills and, technology literacy. Okay, I'll show you one more, 9:43, so the time has just flown. A tech-savvy client uses AI tools to quickly complete assignments in a supported training program. The content is relevant and well done, but instructors are concerned that the client isn't building real-world skills. The counselor is impressed by the client's strategic use of tools and wonders if the training curriculum is outdated. I found this one really interesting as a instructional designer and educator. Yeah, we need to keep modifying educational strategies to assume AI usage in a lot of cases. But I wouldn't say that doesn't mean they're not building real world skills. Yeah, AI is a real world skill. hmm So this one to me had like the most holes in it. I think it was an interesting concept to bring up, but needed a lot more fleshing out on completing assignments in a supported training program. What does that mean? So as I mentioned, I could be in this session for so much longer. Let's do one more Padlet with the rest of our time here. I need to find the Padlet and I will put it in the chat. Sorry, just a moment.
And this is Laura again. You can use the chat to answer the questions. Otherwise, a workaround is if you want to just copy the link and put it into your personal device, That's what I would have to do since it is blocked as well on my end at the state computer.
Happy link. There we go. Okay, here is another Padlet. The questions that I have in here are, what do you see as the role of Gen AI in VR? What policy should be in place? Does your workplace have a policy? What questions do you have, and what comments do you have? We'll give you all a moment to start typing either in the chat or in the Padlet. I like in Padlet how it gives these weird names to people. Secretive newt, awesome platypus, brilliant flamingo. If your workplace has a policy, if you are able and interested to share any aspects of that, that would be fascinating.
April, this is Laura. I know from the state of Wisconsin end of things, and I haven't memorized our policies, um, but tools such as AI note taking, things like that, we are not to utilize those for meetings. And we're really not even supposed to have those running when we are within a meeting. And the primary reason for that is because it becomes part of open record, for
Mhm.
governmental information and meetings. So we had a situation where someone was using the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, or Meta glasses, at a public meeting. And so we did have to address that so that the meeting wasn't being recorded. So,
Hmm.
and I just happened to notice that that the person had them on. Not everyone would have picked up on them because they do look very mainstream.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Hmm. Yeah, only one policy identified in that chat. Yeah, signed consumer permission if using any sort of AI with their case. I think that is important for consumers to be able to opt in. I mean, it just seems like it's such a bigger picture issue than consumer by consumer, though. Okay, it looks like the Padlet and the chat are quieting down. I like how said Microsoft Word continues to try to correct my use of folksy language. The interesting thing with ChatGPT is that you can, if that's what you want to maintain or you want it to communicate with you, you can add that in the memories area, what you want it to do with language. So I've had it change to be more witty and conversational usually, because I find it entertaining. Someone said in comments is in response to the question of gaining real world skills in conversations you need to answer on the fly. Do you pause the conversation and say, hold on, I need to run this through ChatGPT? I have an example from last night. I was having a conversation and I just thought, I want to know what Gen AI would think about this because I anthropomorphize. Um, so while the conversation was going on, I checked out Gemini on my phone and asked it this question, and then it kind of backed up what I was already thinking. So I've been using it like covertly in conversations, but what I learned with mobile learning when iPads came out, it seems like such old technology now. People were like, "Oh, you have an encyclopedia in your pocket, and doctors don't need to learn things anymore. They can just look it up while something's happening." Well, that's not actually the case. People still need to know things. They need to know them on the fly. They need to build on that basic information. So create those new neural networks in our brains. Okay, any other questions or thoughts that people want to add? Or anything you want to mention, Laura?
No, this has been fantastic. I see a lot of excitement and enthusiasm, and I think people would have stuck it out for 4 hours had we planned it for that length of time. Maybe next year, because I know there'll be more for you to share next year. So you may be on a repeat schedule for our webinars, if so willing. But I just wanted to open it up for questions. If people have other things they'd like to ask within the chat, please feel free. Give it a few minutes. I see a few, like, I could go 4 hours on this. Love learning about it. Great training. And I do believe you will be able to share your slides as a PDF that I can send out to participants. Is that correct?
Yep, I will do that.
Excellent.
I saw a question someone asked about, do you have any specific AI software to tools that are HIPAA compliant? I think that would be a workplace by workplace situation. I'm envisioning in the future it'll be like universities have learning management systems like Canvas. Workplaces will have their AI tool, and then they will have, security teams, IT that has the processes solidified on what information can go in there. So one of the case studies that ChatGPT came up with was like a rehabilitation counselor uses AI to create notes on all of these things. And it's like, no, you cannot give it all that information and just create all of your case notes. That's not where we're at right now. So I'm envisioning a future where something like that happens. I have a friend who's an attorney, and her firm is trialing a few different tools because they think it can save them so much time in summarizing things and writing whatever attorneys do. But it's going to be through the firm and they have it vetted versus each individual person going out and looking at their own tool.
And people are sharing that medical facilities are already using AI
Yeah,
note taking instead of the provider dictating like the old days, um, the visit summaries.
right. So by discipline, it's all very different.
And then do you consider software transcribing notes using as AI, generative AI?
No, that and like Google Translate, those are regular AI, like machine learning, versus the generative AI uses deep learning and neural networks to take it a step further and do that prediction.
Yeah, and I think this is, Laura, the example, but the difference between that is if I use AI, traditional AI, to do my notes, it's literally just a run-on transcription of what was spoken. Whereas I've
Mhm.
been in meetings where generative has been used and it, chunks it all up and by topic and summarizes it. And I think, wow, those are great notes, let me tell you. Very useful, but that was generative. So there's a distinct difference between those two.
Mhm. Yeah, when it summarizes the transcript, does that make it generative? Yes, because it's like taking it to the next level. But I also wonder how good it is. I had a really clear outline written in Microsoft Word that I used Copilot to make a presentation out of, and it did not organize it like I had it laid out at all. I thought it would have done better actually, but tool by tool, who knows?
Well, this has been fantastic, April. We can't thank you enough for your time. And please watch for everyone participating. Please watch for that survey that will pop up at once we close the webinar, and then there'll be a reminder tomorrow. This will be archived. Usually takes a couple weeks for the archive on our YouTube channel, since I have to add the captions for that. And then I will use the attendee list to send out a PDF of the presentation. So we have that, you have that as a resource. I know I'm going to be looking up a couple of those audiobooks, change things up on what I listen to when I go for a walk or do clean the house. So thanks again. And I look forward to seeing participants come in to our next 4 webinars. The next one is also next Thursday, and that will be on digital autonomy and ethics. So things like remote supports, smart technology, client awareness, and permission to use, things like that. So thanks again, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their week. And thank you so much, April. This was awesome.
Thank you all.